Well, awesome. Thanks
Um,
everyone for coming. I would like to do these regularly, and my goal is like less me trying to stab off some wisdom and more about hearing either people's reservations about DAOs, or what I would be really interested in is like people who are curious about maybe even starting their own, um, or just want to brainstorm around like what kind of ideas they might have that might make a great DAO. And um, so we could just kind of roll today and come on up if you want to talk about any of that stuff. But I do plan on trying to make this like a regular series where we can talk about the potential of DAOs and what it would mean to start a new one and what kind of DAOs might exist. I had suggested this is a real sidebar, but I had suggested in the soccer channel on Warpcast, like what if we crowdsourced and created a DAO to buy a Honduran soccer team because I'm based in Honduras and the teams can be relatively inexpensive. And there's actually some just pretty good discussion about a couple of DAOs that do have sports teams, um, or otherwise a crowdsourced effort, or like where you would or wouldn't want governance inside of like a sports organization. So I think there's kind of interesting discussions to have around here in general.
yeah, I think that there are a lot of things that we can talk about. Um, I guess if no one wants to come to the stage right now, maybe we can talk about energy to start. Um, because I guess a lot of people here are pretty familiar with purple. Um, but maybe Chris, you can talk a bit about sort of the structure of energy. Um, you know, you deliberately didn't call energy a DAO. Um, so, maybe talk about how it got started, what was the initial structure, and then how it is going now.
Okay, cool. In fact, that was actually just something I wanted to say up front too. It's like the word DAO is kind of very overloaded, in some cases toxic. Um, like everyone brings their interpretation of what a DAO is, from like the super technical to like I had this crappy experience because of XYZ. And all of that is true and valid for sure. Um, but a lot of it I'm just talking about, or like my interest here is like in human coordination. And so like having a group of people pool together funds and then make decisions of what to do with those funds. And like I don't even know if funds is a required part of this, but it's crypto, and so that tends to be a pretty obvious place to start. And so yeah, so we about 13 of us started a DAO called Energy. Energy is um, it's essentially a DAO to support artists and art and creative technology on Zora Network. And so it's sort of intended to be like Purple for Zora Network. Um, and I like very, like, I'm going to say I a lot here, but let me just be clear. There's a lot of us started this. Um, but very intentionally didn't use the word DAO for so many of the reasons I said up front. And so we call ourselves just a collective. Energy is an art collective that funds the arts on Zora Network. And then, like, one difference between the way we started Purple and the way we started Energy was that, yeah, there were three of us who started Purple. It was me, Matt, and Osama. There were like, even, I know, and Bill, we've talked a lot, and I've been on tour spaces with you, and it's like,
Yep.
it's something I constantly struggle with, like, trying to assume any sort of formal leadership. Because even like, we started Purple, it was three of us, right? It was me, Matt, and Osama. And what was that? But there were like 100 people in the Telegram group. And so what does that really mean? I mean, we were just doing the actual organization, the actual pushing things along. I deployed the contracts, I pressed the button and paid the gas. So, but nonetheless, in that route, it like we became known as like the founders. And I have a lot of lessons here about that. Like one, you maybe you started DAO because you didn't want to be a founder. That was certainly like my naive thinking going into Purple, coming from Nouns, where it's like very decentralized, and yeah, it turns out Nouns has founders too, but it was just very decentralized, and like every one person had like an equal role in Nouns in the early days. And so I thought like, oh, we're gonna start this thing, and then we're all gonna collaborate and make this thing happen. And then the reality is like someone just has to make it happen. Once you launch, it could be community members. It could be like someone who like deployed the contracts. But like, with Purple, it was like I realized in the first week, like, oh my God, if I don't take some sort of ownership of this thing and sort of shepherd it through the early stage here, it's just not going to happen. And so thus, I became like this reluctant founder because I was just telling people what we were going to do. And of course, everything goes to a vote, but as I've learned much in my life, often just being the one to say what we should do is like everyone just follows. And it was like a very heavy role in Purple. And it was not something I particularly wanted to do. It's super time consuming. You don't get paid. It's all for the public good. So I feel good about that. But it was just like, I totally signed myself up for something that I did not realize that I had signed myself up for. So when and which, like I'm not complaining. This has been like an amazing experience. Purple is super important to me. And I've met so many friends and people in crypto through it. And so it was like a happy accident, but I totally did not know what I was doing. Then I tried to do the opposite with Energy. And so I'll just say Energy started with Zora announcing they had Zora Network. I'm a big fan of Zora. I'm an artist. I mint on their platform. Uh, I'm a huge supporter of the OP stack and the super chain. And so all of this was very cool to me. And I like sent that tweet out that was like, someone should create Purple for Zora Network. And I totally definitely put that tweet out thinking like someone else should do this. I don't even really want to be involved. But then, of course, it's like you get a lot of
Yeah.
replies and then people sliding into your DMs like, hey, we should do this. And then it just kind of got to a point where I was like, okay, I guess I should. I still thought of myself as like one of 13. Like I will help these people launch this DAO. And so again, we have a Telegram group. We had, we signed up about like 13 early members. And so the notion here was that like, oh, we're just going to start with 13 stewards. There's going to be no founders. There's so many of us that they can't possibly call us all co-founders. And we got one token each when the DAO launched, and then we immediately put up a proposal to take out the founder allocation. And so you became a steward. You were rewarded with one token that allowed you to vote. And I'll just say part of the mechanics around that, which I don't know if I would do it again this way, but part of it is like you just got a bunch. If you're not going to have any founder and anyone, then it's like it'd be nice to have a lot of people who just sort of in the early stages want to help really steward this thing and drive it. And then also, Energy turned out to be a pretty small DAO, but I was concerned because I had seen other DAOs get hacked. It's like, if this thing starts to amass ETH, like maybe even at the rate of Purple, it was like, it'd be great to have a lot of people to be able to vote down any shenanigans. As like, I think DAO attacks are on the rise right now. And so shenanigans are on the rise. So there's a totally different approach, which was like, okay, very intentionally not going to be founders. There's 13 of us. We can't possibly be founders. And so we launched this thing. And it's kind of like, I don't want to say like the tragedy of the commons because I don't think it's quite that, but it's kind of like that. Well, it's like, okay, so now you have no one in the early days who are really invested and have ownership of this thing. And so while we've done a couple of cool initiatives, we've done actually, yeah, we've like, I mean, I raised 2 or 3 ETH through auction sales, and we've supported a bunch of arts that I'd be happy to talk about. And so that's kind of been going good. At the same time, there's no like driving force behind Energy. And so I'm once again feeling like, okay, if we're going to make this happen, and it's super cool, and there's reasons I would love for it to happen, I just think like, okay, I'm going to have to buckle down and try to be one of the community leaders and driving force of it. And so I think one of the big lessons here for me is like when you're starting a DAO is like it does require leadership. Maybe you can think of it as like progressively decentralized, because that's certainly how I thought of Purple, which was like how quickly can I get other people to participate? And Bill, you were one of the early ones who started to participate. But it's like otherwise you're just kind of a little bit aimless. And so I feel like Energy might be in it. So these wound up being like 2 different ways of doing it. One was like, okay, we start with like a centralized team, and people looked at me as like the founder, and I sort of drove this thing in the early days to be like a productive thing. And then Energy was the opposite, which was like, okay, cool, there's 13 of us. And then ultimately the opposite happens, which is like, well, now there's no one driving it. And we do get proposals, and we do have a Telegram with like interesting ideas, but it's like, no one's really thinking about Energy every single day and trying to make it happen. So those are like just kind of the two opposite ends of that spectrum.
Yeah, one thing I noticed about energy is that the last auction is on November 6th. Um, that's like a little over a week ago,
Yeah,
and no one has settled the auction yet, right? So, um, and but at the same time, no, I see that there are new proposals coming up. There's a new pending proposal that was just submitted today, I think.
yeah,
Um, right. So I feel like people are, people are still doing something, but I guess you need a certain level of momentum to make like people care about this. Otherwise, it's
yeah.
just going to be something that like people think about like once a month or something.
Yeah, I think that's true. And Energy has the advantage of like it does have a bunch of artists and just people who are like in the Zora network. And so, we have this prop up now for um, to train a model and then release it through an app called Sources, which I can talk more about. So that's like a cool thing. Then, someone else, V in the DAO, is gonna put up a proposal to do an in-person workshop to onboard artists onto Zora in New York City. That's like a cool thing. We have like, then through, we just have a couple other opportunities to like sponsor a music video. There's like the Sweden Institute of Arts wants to maybe do something with us. And so there's actually like a little bit of momentum building, except it's all building on the like have it deploy the treasury side and not to have it join the DAO side. And so we like very quickly can get to zero ETH, maybe even by like the end of this month, which is cool. And like, my philosophy is that DAOs should always get to zero ETH. But we need to do the other side of that, which is like make it exciting and make it so people want to join. I think maybe the two of those go hand in hand too. It's like you do cool stuff and then people want to join. Um, but I mean, this maybe leads to my second part of the downside of starting with 13 people is like I would think that 13 people would mean that you would like amplify all of your achievements. Like if you had 13 people, again, a lot of these people are like deep in the Zora world. Um, that would be amazing. Like actually, it's a key part of I think a successful DAO is that your own members proliferate the DAO. Purple's okay at this. It's still not the best, but it's okay at it. Nouns is really good at it, right? Like people, if someone loves nouns because they don't stop talking about it. But Energy has been bad at this. It's like the 13 people who were the stewards. It's like they don't retweet the stuff, they don't celebrate the stuff, and that would be like a huge game changer if they did, because it is again, it's like some prominent people in the Zoraverse. Um, but maybe this also comes down to the not really having any sort of feeling of ownership, and so not really feel like in retweeting or shilling. Um, but yeah, anyway,
Yeah, I
I think
mean,
that's like I would actually choose my founders next time by people who are going to retweet everything that happens. That's like a super important part of this.
interesting. Um, and I guess it's hard to get people's attention. So if you have like a few members that are really into this and they just wouldn't stop talking about it, eventually other people are going to join. Um, but like I feel like it's probably more important to have just a few like highly enthusiastic members than ha- than having a large group of people that are kind of interested, but like they're not super into it.
Yeah, totally. It's not helpful having famous people who don't talk about your DAO. Like having famous people in your DAO who don't talk about it. It's
Yeah,
just not that helpful. It turns out. Like maybe if Vitalik was in your DAO, that would be enough. But yeah, totally. You're right. And just in general, it's like in crypto. There's like so much stuff that's competing for your attention. Like I wake up every day and it's like I just want an AI bot to tell me which parts of crypto I should be paying attention to today based on my interests. Because there's just so much going on. This is just one more thing, right? And so if you don't have the social cred, like I really like Bill. Oh, Bill's talking about this thing. Let me check it out. Then it can be like pretty abstract, right?
yeah. So I feel like DAOs are also playing the attention game, especially if we're talking about DAOs that are actively trying to get new people to bid on auctions, to have new people joining the DAO. Um, like you have to to present yourself where you can, get people's attention, and you need to put yourself in front of sort of potential members. I guess
Yeah.
purple has this disadvantage of like we have forecasters, so like we get natural distribution, right? For other jobs, it's a bit harder.
Yeah. Purple is like very special in that way. And like I think having the social network part of it is, I've said this before, but I'll just go through this shtick, which is like the thing that Purple has is that it's like built on top of a protocol, and new people join the protocol every day. And so if 10% of them find out about Purple, and then 1% of them are interested in joining, you wind up like having this natural flywheel where you don't have to do marketing. Like again, now this is like big on like the stunts. Like what can we do? We need to do marketing stunts so that people know we exist and want to join. Like Purple doesn't do any marketing stunts because we just naturally have a growing protocol, and then people come in and they want to participate, and we're like one level deeper down that rabbit hole. Am I? And then, well, I've maybe less underestimated, and then it's like it's tied together by a social network and the app, and so the proliferation just kind of happens. Like it's this, it's like you join the protocol, you get super into Farcaster, and then it's like then somehow you interact with Purple through Warpcast or through one of the clients, through a member, or a bunch of people start talking about a retroactive funding round or something. There's like in the attention game, we like get in front of people's faces in Warpcast pretty easy. Now, and I think like a protocol DAO like this is a really good use case. I especially thought about this a lot before we started Energy. It's like cool, like there's all kinds of different DAOs and they all kind of do different things, but supporting a protocol and then supporting builders and content creators and all of the people on top of the protocol just like makes sense as like a really good use case for me. But then like, so this is why I sent that initial tweet about Energy was like, I thought I looked at Zora Network as a protocol. I'm like, oh, this is like the next obvious kind of fit. Now, what you don't really have is the social network that draws everyone together. And we've been homepaged a few times, we've had Zora support. Um, we've been homepaged a few times, but that only really gets you so far. Also, getting homepage on Zora is just like a single NFT you mint, and so it's like much harder to describe like what this NFT is, the organization behind this NFT. Um, so yeah, so that's just like maybe one of the differences is like even the Zora, Energy is supporting another protocol, Zora, and it's NFTs, and NFTs are great objects of proliferation, and we've been homepaged a few times. It's not like everyone who's minting on Zora has heard of, or it's not even like 10% of the people who've mint on Zora have heard of Energy, right? Where it's like probably 10% of Farcasters, active users, have heard of Purple. Oh, cool. We have
Yeah,
some
and and,
questions.
and I guess, oh, we have some questions from the audience.
Yeah, cool.
Um, so I guess let's start from the beginning. I can't come up but curious about thoughts on a DAO built for media news.
Yeah. So I think it's a super interesting use case. Is he still here? Yeah. There was a builder DAO there is, I guess, called Headliner. And I spoke to them. I think this is a really good idea, which is like, I'll just go into Headliner. I think this applies to lots of news, right? But one of the problems in the media landscape is like there's no more investigative journalism. That's like not where the incentive is. The incentive is like short, punchy, clickable headlines. And so Headliner wanted to do that kind of investigative journalism for crypto. That was, I think, and now I'm like second guessing myself, but I think that was totally like, yeah, they wanted to do it for crypto. And and now that's it, right? Like you would totally, if you believe in investigative journalism and media, you would join this DAO, and then authors would or journalists would propose a piece, and then the governance is cool. You get to choose which ones you would fund, and I think there's a version of that like sounds very dystopian, but there's lots of different ways to do this. It can be like, hey, we're going to do a 5 ETH prop house round where pitch us articles and 5 of them will get greenlit for 1 ETH each. Anyway, I think there's like a lot there, and even though this is about like crypto investigative journalism, I think it's totally relevant to any sort of high quality news, any sort of like independent news source. Um, things where it's like totally journalists need funding to live. Um, but the only funding that really exists kind of comes from clickbaity organizations. I'm not trying to throw all of media under the bus, but I think people probably know what I mean. Now, the challenge with Headliner, and again, I met with them before they launched, and I was telling him like, hey, you are gonna spend a lot of time on this, and you kind of have to be the leader. And he was like, no, that's not how I'm gonna do it. Which totally was my attitude with Purple too. And he's like, I don't really, I just want to be a member of the DAO. And so I feel like it never really, they have done a couple of things, but they never really found momentum because it didn't have like this early passionate community or leadership. I want to check in on them and see what they're up to and maybe like, yeah, and see and just like get a debrief from them and maybe see how we can help. Um, but yeah, I think it's a super interesting use case to me, which is I think a lot of us want to see high quality journalism in whatever your interest is. Could be local, like high quality local journalism. Could be global, whatever, political, crypto, sports. Um, we know people pay for news, but would you join the organization to help make the news? So I like that use case a lot, and I'd like to see more people try it. I think like again, I like am knee deep in like this builder DAO, nouns ish DAO world. So I don't mean to discount Forefront, which is a DAO that has a great newsletter, right? Bankless is a DAO that does a bunch of media content creation. But I reference Headliner because I would be like really interested in just high quality, original investigative journalism.
Yeah, and also I think a slightly different angle is that a bunch of DAOs have also built their own sort of media. I mean, Nouns has the Nouns Square, and in Purple we used to have This Week in Forecaster. So I guess you can also build media projects on top of a DAO. And it doesn't necessarily have to be about the DAO itself. For example, This Week in Forecaster is about forecasting, right? It's not This Week in Purple.
Yeah,
So I think that there are opportunities to do media projects, even though the DAO itself is not just about media.
yeah, absolutely. It's a good one.
Yeah. And then we have a comment slash question from Ennis. I'm DAO product. I guess a protocol I use often. Yeah, that is,
Yeah,
yeah.
cool. I like the notion of like internet native products. I like think of um like look, I'm self-aware enough to know that I'm like this super DAO nerd, but like when I think about crypto, a lot of people say it's like, oh, it's the missing financial layer to the internet. And it's like, okay, there's some truth to that for sure. A lot of truth to that. I mean, we still did transact, but it makes sense that there's like this now kind of native internet financial layer. But like what I'm interested in crypto as a whole is like this internet native coordination layer. Um, because I always like will use the example of like imagine if a Reddit subDAO could coordinate. It's like you have the most passionate people in the world about a particular subject, and like the subjects obviously are everything, right? But like imagine one of the subjects is almost certainly about like cleaning the oceans, and you have like a bunch of people who like want to help clean the oceans, and they probably post links all day and talk about this stuff, but they have no real way of like organizing the other humans in that subreddit to like go clean the oceans together or like have real impact. And so, I think of that as like that's like my worldview of crypto as a whole, which is like, okay, it's the internet's native coordination layer. Money is coordination. Um, but now maybe through DAO governance and again, it's very early days, and I think we need lots more experiments of how we govern. But totally like now you have this crypto native or coordination layer, and if like saving the oceans is your thing, you can find all the other people on the internet who want to like save the oceans, and each contribute money, whatever you can, and crowd fund a treasury, and then as a group deploy that treasury to have some real impact. Now, of course, the example I just gave is not particularly internet native product, right? It's like I'm just talking about crypto as like the coordination layer for the internet and how we as humans coordinate. Um, but then I think there's like a whole separate thing about totally internet native products, which NFTs clearly fall into that, you know, Farcaster, and even more decentralized protocols and applications are like just these totally new internet native things.
Yeah, I strongly agree that the crypto is a coordination layer. I mean, obviously, it can also be used as a financial layer, but I feel like the coordination aspect is being underrated right now. Um, and the fact that a group of strangers, internet strangers, would come together to pull their resources together to achieve something together. This is actually unheard of in the past, because in the past there's no way to put money together and have a trustless way to spend it. And now we have smart contracts, so we can deploy uh, money from the treasury in a trustless manner. Once a proposal passed, you know that it's going to be spent.
Totally. And then just to like go back to the top of the hour where I was like, DAOs are like this very overloaded term, you know. I'm really interested in like how people coordinate to do stuff. And like Party DAO did a cool thing around their launch where they got a bunch of people who are based in New York and were into, we're in the crypto community who love tennis. They pooled their money together and they bought a box for the US Open, and then they all went to the US Open together and had a good time. And that was it. That was the end of it. And and that, I mean, it's like it's not like that's impossible to do outside of crypto, but man, it would have been way harder to get whatever it was, 30 or 40 people to send you money to coordinate this effort. But it was just a very temporary thing, right? It's like just that example of like an internet native way to coordinate, and then it was over. Whereas like a lot of the times, like once you use the word DAO, you think of like this infinite thing. Um, like in the nouns world, we think about like a daily auction that can never be stopped, you know? And those are like extremely artificial constraints on, what this technology is really good for. So it's like, hey, if you wanted to throw a music festival, like, could you just organize a bunch of people and capital who are interested in this music festival? And that's it. It's like maybe the DAO is 6 months or a year because it takes a long time to organize this music festival, but then it can dissolve at the end of it, That's just sort of I think we'll see more of that in the near future. And I don't know. Again, I think there's just like a different way of thinking about a DAO, or also another reason why I like, don't believe we should use that term.
Yeah, let's just call it like on-chain groups, on-chain
Yeah,
communities, right? Um,
yeah,
I guess I do have a question for you, which is more on a more practical side. That is, let's say someone in the audience is thinking about creating a on-chain group today. Right? What are some of the concrete steps that he can take to start such a community?
yeah. So for starters, I would love to talk to anyone and one on one and talk through some of these some of these things. I think you sort of need a pretty clear mission. I think like where a lot of DAOs fail is not having a mission. You need a pretty clear mission to start. And then I would say like, there's still like this product market fit thing. I think you want to like find your tribe before you launch. As in the early days of Build a DAO, I think you saw this where it was like, it's so easy to deploy a DAO. So people deployed the DAO and then they did the marketing. Um, actually, we kind of did that for Energy, which is like, I think a little bit why it's fledgling and where we're trying to like really ramp up interest now. Like Purple kind of happened the other way, which was it's like this Telegram group grew to over 100 people before we launched, right? And so when we launched, we already had an early audience. Even if it's like 10% of those people were really interested, it's still like 10 people who plan on bidding. And early momentum is like momentum is everything, but early momentum is so helpful. So, a lot of people can get even like enamored with their own idea. And it's like, of course people will want to join this thing. But it's like, actually just find those people. Um, so I think there's like the really practical steps, like define your vision, make it super narrow because people are going to put up, the other thing is like people are going to put up proposals and they, you kind of want to know at least like what the guardrails are. And if it's just sort of like, this is a creative DAO and you can do anything, well, then no one really knows what to put on chain or how people feel, right? So it's like a little bit of guardrails. Then I think there are just like some practical things to think through. It's like, what is the founding team? How important is that? How decentralized or not do you want to be? Um, what tool do you want to use? There's lots of ways to do DAOs, from daily NFTs to a party to, ERC20s. So there are just like mechanics to think through also. Um, that's like as you get deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole. Is the art important? What's the art going to be like? All of that stuff. But I think like at the very first level, I was like, what is this idea? What are some examples of proposals that could exist in this world? And like, who else is excited about it? And then like, I would recommend like, how many of those people can you bring into like the founding group of people, um, and make sure that they're going to like add the value. Like you might give them a token for being an early supporter or a founder or, an initial collective member, or manager, call them stewards, but it's like, make sure they're going to bring value for that token. Whereas that value can just be enthusiasm and promotion and the likes. What you don't want to do is like give a bunch of tokens to some people who are like just not at all be involved at all. And that's an easy thing to do, because like, you'll get excited about people who like are interested in your idea, and then you'll offer them a token and they'll say yes. And then they're nowhere to be seen.
Yeah, I think it's very important to remember that even to participate in a DAO is not that easy, right? I mean, even with all the tools that we have today, for someone to even just be an active member of a DAO requires a certain amount of effort. You have to read through all the proposals, you have to vote, and sometimes you have to engage in conversations before
Yeah.
or after proposals. So like, I guess, yeah, to echo your point, I mean, it's very important to have a small group of people that are super interested in the topic and are willing to do the work, right? Do the work, not versus just like saying that they're interested, but they have
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
actually want
Totally.
to put in the time.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll just also add that like, I'm not sure if this is right, but we definitely treat DAOs as like this uncompensated work. And so that's part of it. Like when you're thinking about your DAO, it's like, is this an uncompensated thing? And are you cool with that? And are you going to be able to make time from your compensated life to do this uncompensated thing? One of the things it's like, I recently joined the Optimism Citizens House, and I'm like totally OP pilled. And it definitely changed a lot of the way that I think about DAOs, because I wouldn't consider them super decentralized, because they have they have like an official organization, and lots of people work there, and those people like help manage the DAO. And so like the Optimism Collective, or OP Labs is another group there. Now the downside is they're trading off some decentralization. The upside is like everything is crazy organized. Like there's never a day where I wake up like, what is happening in Optimism today? It's like every day I wake up like, oh, I know what I'm supposed to be doing today, because there's been great communications. There's a full Notion page. There's a workshop later this afternoon if I'm confused at how to do this. And so it's like, well, maybe before I joined the collective, before I joined the Citizens House, I was definitely on the end of decentralized maxi. And now I'm on this, coming back over to the other side, where it's like, oh, when there's actually a central organization that is, forget about the organization. While there's a group of people who are compensated to do this and do a good job of it, it's like, it's so much more digestible to all of the membership, right? And where it's like, even with Purple, it's like people see Prop House for the first time. It's like, where the fuck did this thing come from? And you can be like, oh, there's been a prop and we've been doing them for 3 months, and, go check out this prop. But it's like, well, that person didn't know because they joined yesterday. Um, and it's like, I aspire to do that uncompensated for Purple, to like have a really organized Turnverse space, to, have daily, sort of updates, or like even like, I'm super excited about the Abora that's happening later today about Purple, where it's like a weekly space talking about the things happening in Purple. Like that's pretty great. But anyway, so I aspire to have like something as organized as OP, but it's also like I have a job and like I have other things going on, and it's like, man, I would love us to just pay a librarian or something, for lack of a better term, to just make sure everything was updated daily. And if you joined, it was easy to find out what was going on. Or if you just went on vacation and you came back, there's like an easy place to go and check what we're up to. Um, Again, this is like somewhat at odds with pure decentralization, but like it totally makes it much easier for people to participate. So like if you were going to start with DAO today, I think that's even something to think about, which is like, should these people be getting paid? Is there a paid staff? What would their role be? Like, how are we going to communicate? And also if your thing is like, no, this is like a completely decentralized thing, like nouns, that's okay too. This is like, it should just be a conscious decision.
Yeah, actually, I've been thinking about this recently as well. I'm trying to think if there's any other comparable example to nouns, which is operating, first of all, at a very high level of decentralization, and second of all, has been able to capture a lot of the attention and also, of course, the capital of the crypto community. Like I feel like now started like at the height of the bull market. Like it's very hard to create something like that in a bear market, because it's very hard to find someone to spend 100 ETH at an NFT these days.
Yeah.
So it's like I mean, my point being, it's hard to just copy a DAO. Like you also have to look at sort of the context, around which it was created. Like all other sort of noun style DAOs, I guess, including noun spirit DAO, have not been as successful as nouns itself.
Yeah, and I'll just add that like the the downside of participating in nouns, and so I've been a delegate for 10 months now, and I've been actively involved in governance every day, and it is literally every day. It's like it's so much work. I'm like burning out of nouns, to be honest. It's so much work to just know what's going on. There are new props every day. It's just like you literally have to wake up every morning and see what's on chain. That's like the first thing you do, and then you spend a bunch of hours on Twitter, seeing what people are saying and what the ideas are and what the problems are. Then you like jump into a Discord and there's like a bunch of more people talking about the same thing. And if you do all of that, you are extremely up to date. And if you miss any of that, you like fall behind very, very quickly. Now there's a great passion around nouns, so people are willing to put in that work. Like I think it's just very obvious that like people aren't putting in that same kind of work for Purple, which again I don't expect them to, but it's like when it's like, hey, where did this proposal come from? And it's like, hey, do you know the 10 casts we made about this proposal, asking for feedback? That's where it came from. Uh, but maybe casts are not a good way to try to communicate this stuff if you really want people to see it. Um, but it works for nouns, right? Like people are just so bought in and so into nouns, and it's their
Yeah,
number one hobby, and they know everything that's going on. They read every cast and every tweet. But it's just such a high bar to enter, to really get participation, right?
yeah, because you know this for a long time. How do we bring the engagement level of Purple to that of nouns? Well, then I look at the nouns treasury, and even after fork, they have like $10 million sitting as a treasury, and Purple has only been able to get like 100 ETH throughout its lifetime, right? So that like it's not on a same scale, but um, also as I mentioned earlier, like nouns was created during a very different time,
Totally.
and Purple was created 1 month before FTX, right? So like you
Amazing.
can't possibly compare the two. And I'm actually very bullish for Purple and to see the things that we can do in the next cycle, because after all the work that we've done, all the groundwork that we put in, I feel like when the next bull market comes, um, there's a high probability that we're going to break out, and a lot of people will want to join, and then that will give us a lot more opportunities to do other things, and to make more impact.
Yeah, I think that's true of Purple. I think that's true of most things, to be honest. It's like even in the last bull market where like, you know, people was the big winner. But people have been grinding for 10 years before that bull market made him the big winner. Um, so I think that's true. I think like the nouns team 4156 often says, "Hey, it's a mistake to start down." So I'm totally paraphrasing him, but it's like it's a mistake to start down a bull market because then in the bear you have all these problems. Now the flip side of that is like starting in the bear, you need some funding. Um, again, I'll just say like DAO is a big term. Maybe you don't need funding, but it's like if you are trying to, do initiatives that cost money, you need some funding. And it's like just so much harder to get that funding. And, you know, we see all the kind of stuff we see on podcasts or, a DAO, a party, a fabric crowd fund. It's possible, right? But it's like, it's just much harder to raise money in the bear market in general. Even like get your NFTs minted and stuff. It's just so much harder. Um, which I think is just fine. I think it's like, what is your expectation? When we started Purple, like I remember the call I had with Matt and Osama, like right before we launched, we were like, hey, if this thing got like and again, this wasn't quite the bear market yet, although it was trending that way. It was like, hey, if each one of these tokens got zero point 0.1 ETH, it's like, we would have one ETH every 10 days. Like, that's amazing. That was our expectation. And then it was not that. It started at like, the prices were going between 1 and 3 ETH. So we built that treasury pretty quickly. But it's like now it's sort of settled into this like zero point 0.1 ETH per token. That's a very broad generalization. And it's still like okay, cool. Like every 10 days we have one ETH. Like that's real money to do something. Um, yeah, I'm also like, then we started energy and it was like, I didn't know what my expectation was. I guess I thought it would be like zero point 0.1 because that was like the experience we had with Purple. Um, but I also didn't, was smart enough to realize like, oh, you can have no expectations. I would just say the other way, which is like, what if someone puts 10 ETH into this thing on day one? We need to protect ourselves from that. And that was like maybe an overreaction. Um, but yeah, it's just, you don't really know. I'll just say that, some of the challenges is like just really finding, yeah, in the end, you can call it sort of whatever DAO market fit or something. Um, and so it's actually hard to have any assumptions when you go into this thing because you have no idea what your treasure will be like unless you like know there's some treasury sources. I'll say like I think that the new DAO alpha and what we'll see a lot more of and like what I want to help a bunch of the builder DAOs doing is like it's clear in the bear market for sure that the auction revenue is not quite enough. Like it is okay for Purple because of the size of our initiatives and our token still is sells for okay, but it's still like, I mean, I know we all want the Purple treasury to be much bigger. For a lot of other DAOs like Energy, which again is built kind of on the premise of NFTs, like what are all the other revenue streams we can be doing? From proposals to like services work or like base management has a thing where if you release an NFT and it gets 1,000 mints, then you automatically get airdropped tokens, so you can join the team that way, and then they split the protocol rewards with you 50-50. And so that's like a really interesting revenue model they have, which is yeah, you can earn a token, but in doing so, one, you've made a bunch of money for yourself, but then two, you've made a bunch of money for the DAO. And so I think it's just time to get creative. Again, this is not me with like my purple hat on. This is me with like my DAO hat on. Like it's time to get creative and find alternate ways of revenue. Um, I work at Tronverse. We work a bunch of our customers are services DAOs, so those are sort of a different, interesting beast where it's like, and in those cases, like in a lot of cases, they don't sell you a token. You like earn a token through the work you do, and you can just imagine it's a product studio, and there's like a design pod and an engineering pod and a marketing pod, and a client comes to you for like some product marketing thing, like we're gonna build an app, and then like those groups of people organize and do the work and get paid for the work, but then like a small percentage of that goes into the DAO treasury, which is then used for operations and marketing and growth and outreach and all that stuff. So it's just, I think I certainly was guilty of like looking at the world through like this Namish lens. And then like now I've taken that lens off and realized like, oh, there's so many more experiments to run. The daily auction is not everything. Um, the one a day forever is not a thing that has to happen. These can be temporary. They can be like starts and stops would be something I'd be interested in. Like, hey, we're going to auction these things off for 30 days. And then that team of 30 days, we're going to do stuff together for 2 months. And then maybe we'll open it back up for another 30 days and give a new new group of people in it. I think there's just like a lot of variables that need to be played with.
Yeah, and I think DAOs need to think about revenue generation. Um, and I know we have a lot of discussions in that direction at Builder DAO, because obviously the Builder auction is not doing super well. um, and the DAO is exploring different ways to generate revenue. Um, Otherwise, it's very hard to um, keep spending on
Keep up. Yeah.
big projects, and then not having enough people bidding on the auctions. I say like
Yeah.
it. I
Yeah.
guess my,
Totally.
my point is someone has to figure out where the money comes from. It's either there are a few whales who are willing to spend a lot of money early on, or there's some sort of sustainable revenue generation on it.
Yeah. Totally. And then we actually have the audit prop pinned to this
Exactly. Yeah.
space, and there's just like a bunch of protocol changes in there. And one of the ones that like I had advocated for, and I'm excited about. Again, like this is not something we would turn on for Purple, but it's like founder rewards being baked into it. And so, like this doesn't have to be uncompensated work. And I can imagine a lot of ways where it's like the founder is going to do the work and just need some revenue to do this, right? And maybe the most obvious one that we can take from like the last bull market is like these NFT projects where you had like these 10,000 NFTs and we could reserve our judgment on the art and all of that stuff. But lots of people did them because there was a potential to get paid. And there was always a crypto native part to it, which is like, yeah, but we're all going to use this money together to do some things. And, a lot of those promises didn't come through for lots of reasons. But it's like, it just strikes me like a better way to do a 10,000 PFP project is to let the founders take some of the money because they made the art, they did the marketing, they did the stuff, they're going to manage the community. There's like a lot of value that they add there. But then, some percentage, in my opinion, a vast majority of it, but could just be some percentage, goes into the shared treasury that then is locked by governance, and you have to like hold that NFT to unlock that spend. So that's like, yeah, that's like just one of the things I'm interested in. I think it will like help the protocol grow. Party actually has this, Party DAO. They added this recently too, but it's like, like the whole like show me the incentives, I'll show you the outcomes. It's like, okay, so now there's an incentive to start these DAOs. That's not just like the goodness of your heart. And the goodness of your heart kind of only works for public goods DAOs, right? Like of various types where like you really believe in what you're trying to do and, you're willing to dedicate your free time to it. But for most other kinds of things, it's like you do this thing because you want some compensation. In some cases, you want to get rich. I think like this would allow the actual founder reward in the Builder DAO upgrade is decided by the founder. And so like I could start a DAO and make it 75% goes to me. And that like makes sense that it's just like, hey, I'm an artist and I'm making art and you can participate in this art, but most of it is going to me and then help me with the other 25%. Um, so it's totally like, addressable. I guess my hunch is that like a lot of people will set it at something much lower, like a couple of percentage points. So they just get paid for like the ongoing management of it. And then even that is changeable um, and you can even drop it entirely by vote, right? So imagine you're the founder, maybe you're taking 10% of the token votes. I mean, 10% of the basically what you get is like X percent of the auction revenue. So maybe you're getting 10% of the auction revenue. Maybe it's a significant amount of money, but you kind of ghost, or you're just not doing a good job, or the community's not happy with you. It's like they can just totally vote you out. So then there's an incentive for the founder to like just keep doing a good job and do the work that's worthy of um, that fee. And so, yeah, I think that's super interesting, and again, becomes a new way for the term I kind of use is like social entrepreneurs. Like if you're going to start one of these things, like very entrepreneurial, in a lot of cases you really are a founder. But it's like, okay, so now we have like an economic incentive for social entrepreneurs to start these things.
Yeah, almost, it's like founder slash, influencer.
Mm,
Because at the same time, it's almost like a creator. I mean, it's not exactly the same, but it's also like a creator, building a community, right? The people, the DAO members are not exactly like the followers of a creator, but the similarity is that those people are sort of united by a shared interest or shared mission. So the founders have to be the ones that lead the community to go forward, and then they have to be the ones that are willing to put in the work. I guess if you know if there's anything that I've taken away from this conversation, I guess the most important piece is that like someone has to do the work. Like DAO is not that easy. Like someone has to be willing to uh, you know at the start of the DAO to spend a lot of time thinking through how to build a sustainable community, and
Yeah.
then be willing to sacrifice a bit at the start.
Yeah. And then just to come back to like nouns, it's like maybe like if we just compare nouns to purple, right? It's like in purple, it's like not a real comparison, but like in purple, we have very few proposals actually go up. Certainly very few proposals about like a project someone wants to build or an idea someone has to bring in users to forecast there. And we sort of have this like uh I'll just say like this custom of like, well, you don't, no one puts money in for themselves in the prop. And when you do put money in for yourself, it's like highly contentious. And so, what's the incentive to do a prop? You want to contribute to Farcaster, sure, but it's going to be a lot of work, right? Now, since props going up all the time, and again, their treasury is so much bigger and the funding sizes are huge, but like it's pretty well known and understood that like some of that money is going towards people who are going to execute that prop. And so, it's the incentive now for the whole internet to try to get nouns prop up so they can like make some money and maybe pay their rent for the month or whatever people are going to use the money for. Um, so yeah, so they're just kind of like an incentive things for sure, and
Yeah,
ultimately someone has to do the work and people have to get paid for their work, and so you have to work around that. I was thinking a lot about like even optimism this morning, where it's like in the Citizen House, I get to vote on all of the retro PGF funding, right? And it's like we have like a month, which is great. And I've been like lightly researching, but I'm kind of dread. It's like 600 applications, and it's kind of like, wow, this is going to be a lot of work, and I need to like carve out an entire Saturday or like like a long night when my family goes to sleep to do this, and it's like I'm trading the sort of reputation that you get from being a part of the Citizens House for like a lot of work, right? And then on the other side of that, it's like there's a bunch of people at the foundation who get paid, and they don't get paid to evaluate the props. Actually, I think they don't evaluate the props, but they get paid to like manage the organization. Now, it's an interesting like dynamic because for me, it's like it's so much easier because everything's super organized. It's like it's just very organized. Google Sheets. There's workshops on how to think about what to fund. They record them and distribute them afterwards, like so very well organized that it probably is just like a day for me versus like nouns, which is every day. But it is like there's a lot of people doing free work to be a part of the Citizens House. It's just kind of interesting. So what is the incentive there? I mean, the incentive is like to be a part of this, to help public goods funding. And that's why it's like I think public goods funding is pretty good for free work because people are doing it for like out of passion and like the love of what they're doing. And it's pretty hard to get free work of anything else.
yeah, and also I guess status plays a role, um, because if you're a part of a citizen house, I guess you sort of get higher status, which is sort of it's like a compensation for the work that you do.
This is it. I know you and I have shared the common thesis for since day one that purple is kind of status as a service. Um, a lot of these DAOs, I think the nouns being involved in governance at nouns is sort of status as a service. And so it's not like, yeah, so I do say it's uncompensated, and I just mean that's unpaid. But you do kind of get status or reputation or all these other things you're trying to build in the space. That's pretty great. But then, eventually you just get to the point where it's like just hard to prioritize status. It's like something you try to do and you want, and everyone wants it. It's like, at the end of the day, it's like, okay, I got 8 hours today and these people are going to pay me, or I could go try to be internet famous. You got to make that decision.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I've realized that we are almost at the hour. So maybe to sort of wrap up the conversation, um, any sort of last words that you want to say, or any other topics that you want to mention that we haven't talked about?
I mean, not really, except that I want to do these regularly, and I want them to be like a lot more about different types of DAOs that can be started, and people who are DAO curious or want to throw an idea. I mean, I pulled this together last night, with you, Bill. So I'm super happy for everyone who showed up and the turnout here. But I would love to like make this a bit more brainstorming session around either people who are in other DAOs want to talk about their other DAOs, or are curious about starting new ones, or want someone else to start one, which is what I always want. So yeah, just happy to kick this off.
Yeah, I mean, if anyone wants to speak next time, or just to talk about DAOs in general, you can message Chris or message me, and we should be able to, put you as a speaker. Um, and I do feel like it would be better if this is more interactive instead of just you and I talking to each other.
Yeah, totally. Like
Fantastic.
maybe I'll
Yeah.
maybe for next week I'll try to find a guest and we can interrogate that person. Maybe that's a good way to start this. I always want this to be like anyone can jump on stage and talk about their thing, but maybe if I bring a guest, we can start to get that energy going.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. If you have someone in mind, we should have them on, and then yeah, you can interrogate the guest.
Yeah, great. All right, thank you, Bill. Thanks everyone.